Welcome to Modern Anarchy, the podcast exploring sex, relationships, and liberation. I'm your host, Dr. Nicole.
I tried to keep her quiet, but she's screaming inside of me. I tried to keep her hiding, oh, shut up. I tried to keep her quiet, but she's a wild, wild woman.
On today's episode, we have Dr. Jen. Join us for a conversation about building the courage and skills needed to talk about sexual pleasure. Together, we talk about expanding our comfort zone, habituation in long-term relationships, and cross-cultural sex education. Hello, dear listener, and welcome back to Modern Anarchy. I am so delighted to have all of you pleasure activists from around the world tuning in for another episode each Wednesday. My name is Dr. Nicole. I'm a sex and relationship psychotherapist providing psychedelic-assisted psychotherapy, author of the Psychedelic Jealousy Guide, and founder of the Pleasure Practice, where I support individuals in crafting expansive sex lives and intimate relationships. Dear listener, did you know that I have Fat Cat on my lap right now? I'm in the studio and she is on my lap. She is purring. She's purring very gently. I wish that this mic could pick it up. Fat Cat, you gotta tell them how happy you are to be on my lap in the recording studio. Oh, dear listener, this episode is so powerful. Man, anytime I get to talk to people that are discussing cross-cultural sex education, chef's kiss. Like, dear listener, there's so much to learn here, okay? You know I talk all day long about our psychology, and what's really profound to know about our psychology is that we are impacted by our relationships around us. Yes, our relationships to culture, and it is on an unconscious deep level. And so there's so much enlightenment when we study across cultures to realize the variations of the different patterns, the desires, the things that we crave. And so I am so excited to be bringing this episode to you, dear listener, all about what it means to have the voice of a liberated orgasm. All right, dear listener, if you are ready to liberate your pleasure, you can explore my offerings and free resources at modernanarchypodcast.com, linked in the show notes below. Dear listener, that is also where you can find all the information about my upcoming free workshop, Queering Psychedelics, the setting, and sacred joy in queer community. If you are queer, if you are doing psychedelics, this is the workshop for you. We are meeting on Zoom, okay? On a Saturday from 10:30 a.m. to 12 p.m. Central Standard Time. And so many of you have already signed up. I know we have 300 tickets available. It is on Zoom, so there's a limit to how many people can come into that space. But so many of you have been sharing this with your friends, with your community, with your lovers. And I'm so delighted to be welcoming all of you into this upcoming workshop and to really talk about what it means to have pleasurable queer psychedelic experiences. If you want to learn more, that is also on modernanarchypodcast.com, and I'll have the links down below in the show notes for you. And I want to say the biggest thank you to all of my Patreon supporters. You are supporting the long-term sustainability of the podcast, keeping this content free and accessible, so thank you. And with that, dear listener, please know that I'm sending you all my love, and let's tune in to today's episode. Dear listener, there's a space already waiting for you where you are invited to let go of every old script about sex and relationships and begin living a life rooted in your pleasure, empowerment, and deep alignment. I'm Dr. Nicole, and this is your invitation to the Pleasure Liberation Groups, a transformative, educational, and deeply immersive experience designed for visionary individuals like you. Together, we'll gather in community to explore desire, expand relational wisdom, and embody the lives we're here to lead. Each session is woven with practices, teachings, and the kind of connection that makes real transformation possible. And I'll be right there with you, guiding the process with an embodied curriculum that supports both personal and collective liberation. This is your invitation into the next chapter of your erotic evolution. Say yes to your pleasure and visit modernanarchypodcast.com/pleasure practice to apply. And so the first question that I ask each guest on the show is, how would you introduce yourself to the listeners?
I go by Dr. Jen. The doctor part of that is my Ph.D. in sociology, and which really frames a lot of my work and how I view the world and was trained to view the world just through the lens of groups of people and patterns of behavior. And my specialty area in sociology was around marriage and relationships and sex and sexual health. And yeah, and so with that, I've gone on and I've had a private coaching practice for 17 years doing relationship and intimacy coaching. But my real passion all along is the public speaking, getting people together in groups to talk about these uncomfortable, vulnerable, taboo topics that are some of our most important topics, whether emotional intimacy or sexual intimacy, and letting people know it's okay to laugh together and be awkward together. So, yeah, and there's lots of other stuff, but that's a good overview.
Well, it's such a joy to have you on the podcast today.
Thank
I'm
you.
so excited because cross-cultural research, I think, is one of the most liberating things around sexuality, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, both like comparing the US culture in general to other societies and cultures currently and over time,
Yes.
but also all of the subcultures within the United States. And, and I travel around the United States and around the world public speaking on sex and intimacy and marriage topics. But within the US, there's so much variety in how I shift up what I'm speaking, or the people that are like, challenge us, push us out of our comfort zone. We want to go to the edge. And then other audiences that are like, this is going to be classy, right? That's their main concern.
Where are my pearls? Where are my pearls?
Yeah, there's a fair amount of collection of the pearls in Texas. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But they want to talk about these topics and they appreciate them and they push themselves out of their comfort zones. And that's, the most I can ask for any of us. Are we willing to be a little awkward and a little uncomfortable to have the conversations that we want to have or need to have, but have been avoiding?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. I can already tell we're going to go so deep with this one. Before we go there, I want to ask you, what was your personal journey to getting to this space? How did you become so fired up about sexual liberation?
Yeah. So I was raised in a small town in Pennsylvania outside Philadelphia, was raised Catholic. Great family, parents still together. They actually, yesterday was their 58th wedding anniversary,
Aww.
which is amazing. So just really grateful for that stability. But we didn't talk about sex almost at all. And the sex education wasn't so great. And this was, primarily in the 80s. So I went to college and my roommate, my sophomore year, joined the sexual health peer educators, where you get to go around to the dorms and do condom demonstrations and safer sex talks and healthy relationships. And she was having such a good time in the group. And she was also learning public speaking skills, which actually was one of my motivations, because I would be so nervous. Those group presentations at the end of the semester we had to give in college, I would just be so anxious. And some classes even anxious to raise my hand. And I thought, well, if I can get public speaking skills, and if you could stand up and talk about sex in front of people, you could probably talk about anything. But here I am 32 years later, and I just never stopped talking about sex. So,
Amazing.
and one of the things that really hooked me, a couple of things. One was how much fear and shame there is, how much misinformation there is, and how interesting, and from a sociological view, the gender power dynamics, about how we're raised differently. We also sometimes feel emotions differently or have different needs. but we're really not, we don't get good education around that. And it's tough to know it for ourselves, let alone to communicate it to a partner. And then let alone in the moment, sort of the power dynamics of like, and this was college students, so it's like, can we put a condom on or not? Can I ask to use a condom? And that was kind of the basic sort of point of contention for a lot of folks then. So anyway, yeah, so it hooked me, and I became really fascinated and realized there was so much. I became comfortable talking about it and realized that that was so, I could bring that to any space I came to, which then gave permission for people to talk about things that matter to them or things that they're interested in learning more about or things they're struggling with, but they're afraid of being judged or stigmatized or shamed or just don't have a space to get accurate information. So here I am 32 years later, pretty much every space I go into, people like I play beach volleyball every Saturday, mostly with a bunch of guys, and people will absolutely make more sexual jokes or bring up sexual conversations. And somebody will be like, "Oh, did Jen start this conversation?" I was like, "Dude, I didn't start it at all. I haven't said a word." I was like, "I think just my presence helps facilitate it." But that's lovely. I love that. I love playing that role.
I hear you. I hear you in so many different ways. The people will come up to me and be like, "Nicole, I had my first threesome." I'm like, "That's so great. Like, we've never talked about this before, but thanks for telling me. And thanks for knowing I'm the person that you could tell that to." Like, yeah.
A lot of people are like, "Can I show you pictures?" It's not, I'll cover, I'm covered enough, but can I show? And I was like, sure. Because they're like so proud of things they've done. Or like, "Can I show you me at my first, dungeon up on a St. Andrew's cross?" I was like, that's awesome. Good for you. And I'm always like, "Oh, I don't know if I needed to see that," but they're so proud. And I'm like, want to be that safe space.
Of course. Of course. I know, the cat, Fat Cat.
I know. Yeah. What's your cat's name?
Fat Cat.
Fat Cat?
Yeah.
Oh, I love
And
cats.
She's not even fat. She's very petite. But she is the co-host of Modern Anarchy.
Oh,
so
yay!
So she loves to come in.
It's pretty perfect.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I know, right? It all adds up.
Like,
it all adds up.
I see what we're doing here.
I didn't plan that.
For this.
I didn't plan this. I fostered, and then she stayed,
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, it's lovely.
So, yeah. But yeah, I hear you. And as a psychotherapist, I think about how, at least the frame that I was trained in would say that our suffering comes from disconnection, whether it's from, systems of oppression that cause that to our interpersonal relationships. It's all connected. And sexuality is one of the top suffering points for people. And also one of the most difficult things to start a conversation with, even with a therapist, in this super confidential, safe space. And it's still hard, right? And so when you hold that space for folks, that connection is healing in so many different ways.
Yeah, thank you. That's lovely. Yeah. And I was thinking too, over the years, the number of folks that have come to me and they're like, "Well, we have a couples therapist, but we don't feel comfortable bringing up sex with her." And I was like, "Dude, like you should be able to," but they very well may be reading something in that person that person isn't comfortable with it. So I think often they truly are picking up on something. And the thing is, if their therapist or counselor isn't asking questions about their sex lives, they probably aren't comfortable with those topics. They probably are avoiding it. So, yeah.
Absolutely. The listeners couldn't see my face of just jaw drop when you said that. Like, that's so wild. That's a huge part of couples therapy.
I know.
Like,
I think it's changing, because I've been doing this for so long. In the past 17 years that I've been a coach, there has been a lot of shifts. But when I started, I feel like in San Diego, I know I was one of the few safe, truly non-judgmental spaces that folks were going to find around these topics, that they knew that they could show up with any. I'm like, I don't care if you're queer, kink, poly, whatever. Like this, if everybody's consenting, like, and you've got some issues that you are, want to be vulnerable and work through, great. Come, let's do it. So, but that's definitely changed a ton in the past 17 years, which is lovely. So it's so much more part of our public discourse and normalized to talk in general about these topics and certainly work with professionals around these topics. So thank goodness.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, absolutely. 5 years of a doctorate in clinical psych and no training on sex, though. So careful, dear listener. Careful, dear
No,
listener. Yeah, I didn't get,
still
no,
nothing.
yeah, there was nothing in my training on sexuality
Oh
at
my
all. I think
gosh.
the most we ever touched on it was in a diversity course, and it was, one piece of diversity, and that was it.
Oh,
So you have to think that every
jeez.
single psychologist who's coming out doesn't have a single requirement. I know it can
That's
change per state too.
stunning.
Like I know California
Yeah,
does have it where you're at. Illinois does
yeah,
not have that as a requirement.
got
So
it.
there's a bit of
Oh,
wisdom there
that's
as
super
yeah.
disappointing. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, so as you said, having discernment, right? You can feel when the
Yeah.
clinician is uncomfortable about that. And if that's the case, find another person, find
Yeah.
another coach, another
That you could
healer,
bring all of
someone.
you to your
Yeah.
sessions. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Were you given abstinence only education or what was your sex ed
We
like?
didn't get that. Yeah, so this was in Malvern, Pennsylvania in the 80s. It was very, no, we did, I mean, we did, to the credit of Pennsylvania in the 80s, like we got sex ed, but it wasn't abstinent only. We got some birth control, anatomy stuff, but it was just that very sort of disconnected, that disconnected clinical version of it that I never really understood how it connected to me.
Mm-hmm.
And there really did have more of that vibe of like, oh, sex and pleasure, desire is all in the boys' realm or in the
Mm.
men's realm. There
Yeah.
was definitely no understanding or reference to it to girls or women's experiences of our bodies or sexual experience, sexual desire, sexual pleasure was definitely not a part of it. And the one thing that was absolutely missing from the curriculum was the clitoris.
Mm.
So I did not learn about the clitoris till I was 18 with my first boyfriend, who thankfully did know that I had a
Gosh.
clitoris.
Yeah.
So,
God, it's got more nerve endings than the penis. How
yeah,
are we missing out on this?
I know. I know. Yeah.
Oh, gosh, gosh, gosh. Well, yeah, for me, I did have abstinence only education, right? It was the paper
Okay.
test.
Mm.
And it was horrific. And I know that's what led for me, my first
Mm.
sexual experience, to the sobbing that deeply occurred afterwards.
Aw.
Oh,
Yeah.
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 Would I have this podcast if I didn't go down that path?
There you go.
Probably not. I
Fair.
would have been like a pottery designer just hanging out, But instead, the universe.
Yeah.
I'm curious for you, how do you think that disconnect in your education impacts some of your first sexual experiences?
Yeah. So, first of all, and I'm really grateful. I was a late bloomer,
Mm.
and I'm really glad I was. I didn't get my period till I was almost 16.
Mm.
So I wasn't really interested in boys till like later high school, or there was some interest directed towards me, and I was like, I don't know what to do with this. And it was just scary. It all felt scary.
Mm.
So, and I'm grateful for that, actually. And yeah, and I think because of that, then when I started having some sexual experiences, not till like 17, really, 18, I had a stronger sense of myself and boundaries already. And yeah, and then, it was only a few years after that, then I was in college and then I started becoming a sexual health peer educator. So it was normal to me to talk about these topics. And it was normal to me that nobody should ever make me do anything I don't want to
Yeah.
do.
Good.
And of course, if I don't want to do something, I have the right to say no. Yeah, so thankfully, despite not having great education and not really knowing my own pleasure and being a late bloomer, when I started exploring and getting into that, I just was more of an adult
Mhm.
actually, and I'm really, I mean, it made me not cool at all, and but it also protected me because by the time I was becoming a sexual woman, I just had more, developed prefrontal cortex,
Yeah.
basically, and sense of self and confidence. So, yeah, and thankfully then, when I started learning, so this was like 93 when I became a sexual health peer educator.
Hmm.
It was in the AIDS epidemic. And it
Mm.
was the
Yeah.
early 90s that they realized, like, oh shit, college students could also get HIV AIDS. We better be educating them around that, and we better teach them something called outer course. So how do
Mm.
you have a fun sexual encounter with pleasure but not have the main exchange of fluids through
Yeah.
intercourse or
Mm-hmm.
anything penetrative.
Yeah.
So my introduction to sex in that way was all creativity and was all thinking
Mm.
outside the box,
Yeah.
which has been great, which has been so great for my pleasure and for exploration and for then having a private practice and helping clients think outside the
Right.
box. So I was, started learning this stuff and teaching about it when I was 20, so like
Yeah.
32 years ago already. So I think I got, you know, a combination of factors
Mm.
thankfully kind of protected me otherwise, because if I had, got my period at 11 and had a sex drive and desire already, God, I would have not had a good head on my shoulders.
Mm.
Probably would have gone along with a lot of things I didn't want to do
Mm-hmm.
or like wanted to be liked
Mm-hmm.
and just gone along with things. So I avoided that. Plus, like I didn't start drinking till I was maybe 25, like in grad
Mm.
school,
Wow.
again, because it just didn't feel right for
Mm.
me.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody was doing it, and I was like, it doesn't taste good and it doesn't feel good. So there was a lot of really not giving into peer pressure and not being cool, but
Mm-hmm.
thankfully to like really listening to my own inner sense of self and what was right for me, which is interesting because
Mm-hmm.
that wasn't instilled in me or taught to me.
Yeah.
It was just I just feel lucky actually because I don't that wasn't of my own doing to end up with that
Yeah.
confidence and sense of self. So.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Any good role models that you could think of during that
No, that's
time?
the thing.
Wow.
It's
Yeah, because
not
that's my
like,
next thought is like,
right.
who?
No, I
Yeah.
know. It's interesting. I was just thinking about it for
Not
myself
that it
also.
can't be innate. Maybe I can just give that to you too, but like we're so relational. I was like, is there a model?
Right. Yeah. Part of it is probably playing sports growing up, starting at age
Sure.
8, and that is the thing of feeling strong in my body and a
Yeah.
confidence and a sense of self and communicating in that way. I really do think, yeah, like I said, it's the late bloomer thing. It was a stable, loving childhood and
Yeah.
but I mean we never talked about boundaries, consent
Sure.
wasn't talked about, like not sex wasn't talked about, none of it
Yeah.
was. There's just something about a sense of self. Yeah, I just think it's a lucky combination of factors. Because that's the thing.
Totally.
I wish I could, break apart the pieces and be like, this is how
Yep.
I constructed this when I was 16, and here you could do
Here,
the
you can
same
do it
thing.
too.
But
Yeah.
some of
Yeah.
it's just luck.
Yeah. Yeah. I hear you. And even sports is a good thing
But yeah,
to
I do
point
think
out
sports
too.
probably there is a strong sense of that. Yeah.
Yeah, because you have to be embodied. And as an athlete, you
Mm-hmm.
know, this is where my boundary is, or I'm going to get hurt if I keep pushing
Yeah.
it with this practice. Right. And
Yeah.
so I'm so glad that you had that because I do think, as you said, being able to, in the classroom, talk about sexuality, that requires a certain level of confidence. When you're
Yeah.
with your partners to share what you want in that moment, that requires a certain level of confidence that
Right.
translates all the way across. And I'll tell you, when I was in my training, there was like two topics that would always shift the tone of the room. And it was definitely sex and psychedelics. Anytime I brought those into the classroom, everyone kind of like tensed up. I was like, ooh, what's up with this energy shift? And you can feel it in the room,
Oh, so
right?
interesting. Yep. Yeah.
It's like everyone
Yeah.
holds their breath
Good
for
for
a
you.
second.
You're
Thank
like,
you.
I'm just gonna plant this little seed and see what grows here.
Yeah, they'd be like, oh, you
Or
have to
drop
do
this bomb.
right. They'd be like, here's a topic, do a presentation. I'm like, pelvic floor therapy. Here's this
Oh,
other
so
things that, yeah, I was just like
important.
bringing it. And so
Oh,
everyone
that's
knew
so
me as the sex
good.
girl, you know? I'm like,
Oh,
yeah, this
so
guy,
yeah, but
yeah.
the service you did to them, no doubt what they gained
Thank
in
you.
comfort and normalizing and topics they learned, that's awesome. Good for you for being that person.
I appreciate that. I
Yeah.
appreciate that. Truly, we need more people doing this work
Yeah.
because, yeah, I think about the bodily autonomy and the way that, again, that translates to so many other areas of your life. My voice was so small, and now
Mm.
truly, I mean, it's not all about orgasm, but the harder I orgasm, the stronger my voice becomes. And
Oh,
even that,
interesting.
true, is a voice experience, right? The more I let
Mm.
that pleasure truly come out
Yeah.
of my body, the more I
Mm.
am embodied, the more I
Yeah.
stand tall and I'll growl, laugh, cry with more force.
That's awesome. That's
Yeah,
awesome. So it's just sort of like the floodgates opened to your dropping into your authenticity, leading through like sound and voice. That's awesome and pleasure. Yeah.
I did appreciate that. I was reading one book called In a Different Voice. Forgive me, I forget the feminist
Mm.
writer. but she would talk about how women's voices changed in groups depending on where they're at, and quite literally the sound of that. And even when you think about the
Oh,
60s, let's think about women's voice. Hi, I'm Dr. Nicole, and this is what I
right.
do. Right?
Yeah.
Versus like that deeper. So I've always been curious about,
Hmm.
orgasm and pleasure and the breath that
Mm.
is required in that, and how
Hmm.
that could be constricted if your voice all day long is in such a tight space.
That's so interesting. That is interesting, yeah, because I know there's been research connection between our mouth and our throat and our genital areas and all, and like connections between like opening them up together. I feel like there's some interesting research around that. But I think there's also just this like this normalizing of us being louder and taking up more space and focusing on our pleasure and release in that way, like all of that, the more we get comfortable doing that and normalize doing that and normalize being witnessed in that way, I feel like that carries over to all of our the rest of our lives.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think one tricky area is masturbation and
Hmm.
self-pleasure. I am such a big fan of people building their own creative solo pleasure practice. And
Yeah.
also, I know, my internship year was in Indiana, in Gary, Indiana, right?
Oh,
And so I was working with much more conservative folks and
yeah.
on sex topics. And so I knew that that wasn't always something that I could even really touch. I would try, and then there was a lot of pushback. And obviously, I'm not
Yeah.
going to push my own
Yeah.
ideas.
Right.
But I'm curious for you, like you mentioned even Texas, like how do you navigate?
Mm.
How do you navigate? For me, that feels like such an essential part of this, of being able to quite literally touch yourself and know your own pleasure and know that. How do you navigate the cultural sensitivity across so many spaces as you started with?
Yeah, you mean specifically around masturbation
Sure,
topics
let's
or
start
just in general?
there.
Yeah, so I would say masturbation is more a topic I talk about, like when I'm working with college students and
Mm-hmm.
talking to them. One of the main audiences that I work with at this point is actually high-level CEOs and their spouses and partners.
Oh, sure.
So it's a very unique space that I feel really lucky I've gotten into, especially in my unique field. So much less likely to talk about masturbation just in those groups at all,
Uh,
because they tend to be in long-term relationships. And there's just, I only have a limited amount of time. There's other
yeah,
topics that are more important to
sure.
focus on in those spaces. I will, though, often try to figure out how to work in like a masturbation joke.
Mm.
There's certain audiences, like Southern audiences, I will do more in the beginning of talking about this is awkward, this is uncomfortable, and that's okay. We're all feeling that. We're all in the same boat. What I encourage to each of you is to sit and find, study where your own comfort zone is and how do you just lean a little bit outside of that for today. And you might notice your heart pounding a little bit or getting a little warm. Like, play in that space for yourself, and because that is where growth and juiciness and happiness and true intimacy really is and where it lies when we're able to get out of that. So I'll spend more time sort of encouraging that. But I do that with any audience because there's always, I'm going to have a mixed bag. I'll always have people that are like, go to swingers clubs
Right.
and other folks who really never talk about these topics. And my audiences range like with the CEOs and their spouse partners. It could be somebody who's 30 to somebody who's 82.
Mm.
And sometimes they're all mixed in the same audience. So
Mm-hmm.
really different generations. And so because I've been doing this for so long, I've figured out what are the fundamental underlying things that will
Yeah.
connect to all ages, audiences, and comfort levels. But so everybody is getting skills and ideas. And even if they're
Mm.
super comfortable with this, they're still going to get a little gem. They're going to get a little nugget, a little something
Yeah.
to be able to take home and to try differently. So, and
Yeah.
then I use humor. I will use, if I'm
Right.
going to an audience that I believe is more conservative, I will literally say, I'm like, okay, we're gonna do some cheesy sex jokes here because
Right.
because I like them and because I know this is uncomfortable, but it's okay that we all laugh together. And so
Yeah.
I will just like call it all out
Good.
and then, use humor, show people we can laugh and be silly and that's good. And it opens up that space. And then I love by the time I
Mhm.
get to the the end of the talk, and folks are, yelling jokes out at times and stuff. And it's great, like
Yeah.
that's perfect. I mean, granted, they're usually a few drinks in by then, which helps, but still, like,
Loosen 'em up.
we're normalizing these topics. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. What an immense skill you have when you're traversing
Thank you.
so many different cultures, generations, frameworks. That's a
Yeah.
very nuanced skill, truly.
Thank you. I think
Uh-huh.
between, having my PhD in sociology, and so I was just so steeped for years into viewing these topics and viewing people
Right.
as being exposed to different sociocultural, political, geographic beliefs around sex and marriage. And so
Hmm.
it's so much in how I view things. Plus, it really does help. And I noticed this change. I mentioned I'm 52 now. I've noticed this change once I got into my 50s. Because, I've looked at our field in the sex field, and I was like, why does it seem that, like, Dr. Ruth didn't make it till, like, her 60s or something? Esther Perel, I think, till she really hit her stride, was, like, mid to late 50s. And I was like, what is it? Is there something
Easier to
something about this field? Are
digest.
we only comfortable with older women talking
Yes.
about these stuff,
Yeah, I'm
or
gonna go for
older
that one.
women with heavy accents
Yes, I'm gonna go
talking?
for that one too.
I know, I know. I've sociological. I was like, oh, this is very interesting to look at. But
Yep.
I have noticed an aspect of wisdom that having 32 years that I've been talking about these topics and studying them, also, I have seen so much cultural shifts. Plus, in that time period in college and grad school, I was also learning about the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, like all of it
Right.
leading up to it, plus earlier feminist movements and suffrage movements and social movements in US society. So there's just been, I have such a depth and a breadth of understanding, and so much of it lives in me now, having experienced it for so many years
Yeah.
while watching it and noticing
Mm-hmm.
patterns. So I do feel like there is something in the 50s that I was like, oh, this is the word wisdom. I was like,
Mm.
it
Mm-hmm.
really feels different. And there's a confidence around it. So I was like, oh, maybe that's part of it around this field, that there is something of experiencing enough
Yeah.
things, and witnessing all these shifts in society. So anyway,
Yeah.
just a thought.
Absolutely. Aging like fine wine, right? Like we're getting richer every
Yes,
every
I know.
day through
Mm-hmm.
experience, right? Every trip is more wisdom. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I think about Dr. Ruth. I watched one of her documentaries that she had
Oh yeah.
out, and one of the most fascinating pieces of that was they had a listener write in a letter. And one of the letters was about what Dr. Ruth did when she was younger. And it was essentially asking if I think she had sex before her marriage or something,
Mm.
something, something. And she essentially said, well, I had multiple children, so something happened. And my heart just dropped. I was like, my God, you are making a sex documentary and you couldn't
Ah,
possibly say, I had sex,
oh, that's
even for
interesting.
procreative sex. Like,
Right.
for sex for pleasure, I can understand
Yeah.
how that was tricky for the time, but like, you had children.
That's interesting. So you don't think she was just making a joke? You think there was actual something
I feel
that,
like even if that's a joke, that's not funny to me.
right? Yeah, I
Like, because
got
I'm like,
it.
you had
Right.
sex? Yeah, great.
Yeah.
Like, why do
Yeah.
we have to put that as the joke? Like, make it about the orgasms you had during it, Like,
Right.
sure, push
Right.
the edge there with that.
That's interesting.
So I was
Yeah.
just so like, and I understand, like, thank you,
Mm.
Dr. Ruth. Like, gratitude for the way that she paved so much
She
of,
really did for us. Yeah.
yes. And also then being able to see, like, the
Yeah.
limitations right there. I was like, damn,
Oh, I was
damn.
the fourth edition of her Sex for Dummies book. I
Mm.
mean, because would she pass away like 2 years ago?
Yeah, yeah.
So, and I think this was maybe like 6 years ago or something. I was asked to be the technical editor for the fourth
Wow,
edition of her. Yeah,
congratulations.
thank you for her. Unfortunately, I never had to talk with her because apparently
Oh,
they had like multiple levels. They're like, yeah, no,
sure.
you'll probably never talk to her. She's got multiple levels
Yeah, yeah,
in
yeah.
between
I
her.
hear that.
But the main thing, because they wanted an updated version of it specifically for, so this was probably 6 years ago or something. I think they were targeting like millennials,
Mhm.
but her views were so old school on consent. And I kept, adding notes in the margins saying, hey, if you really want to target a younger generation, I go, this is offensive.
Yeah.
Women and girls keep getting blamed
Yep.
for, being attractive or taking their top off that then the boys or the men can't help themselves. And that
Ugh.
really was the messaging. And
Ugh.
so I was like, this is not you can't, like, you can't have this in a
Yeah.
book at this point and not with your name and all. And so I kept, at various times I was like, don't mean to be a broken record here as I'm
But
typing it into the notes, but I was like, this is, you got to take this line out or try it this way. Yeah. So I did go and look, and they made changes, and they made
good,
some
good.
substantial changes around it, thankfully. But that was one thing she was known for, even when she was asked questions, because she was still speaking some in her late 80s, early 90s
Hmm.
occasionally, I think. And that topic, like, she would definitely ruffle feathers when folks asked around consent. So it was,
Mm.
I mean, a very different generation. So, yeah.
A very common experience when you look back on any historical figure is the context of where they were at, the
Yeah.
ways that they were messing up. And I know people will do the
Yeah.
same thing to us as we
Oh, yeah.
continue the lifelong journey of
Yeah.
deconstructing the systems, right? Because it's like,
But ideally with
yeah.
compassion
Yes, yes,
and
and not cancel
understanding.
culture. Yes,
Yeah,
yes. Calling
exactly.
people in as you were in that moment, right?
I know. Because I was like,
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure whatever you're doing now, in a few years, it's going to come back and bite you in the ass. So maybe a little
Mm-hmm.
more awareness and kindness and compassion right now. I know.
Mm-hmm.
It's not my
Mm-hmm.
favorite part of our field about how people eat each other. So,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Mm-hmm. So we live by different values in those moments. So yeah,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciated what you had said too when you're speaking to so many wide audiences about essentially the window of tolerance is what I was hearing,
Mm.
right? For the listener, it's that space of capacity, especially as an athlete, like you mentioned, right?
Mm.
You notice there's a window of
Mm.
tolerance when you can push yourself and your muscles to do a little bit more. And then there's also that window of hurting yourself, right? If you
Yeah.
push too hard, you've
Yeah.
broken
It's
the
a really
muscle.
good analogy for it. Yeah.
Yeah. And so when we think about, as we named, right, there are systems of oppression around sexuality that we'll be unpacking for a lifetime. And this is work that we all need to do to unpack our cultural bias around these topics, right? And so when we're doing that work, we do have to think, whether it's you yourself or you're an activist like you, right?
Yeah.
Thinking about that window of tolerance of how far can we go with pushing people's capacity. And if they get to that space of where they're breaking the muscle, we can think about that in terms of the neuroscience as getting into our amygdala and the fight,
Mm.
flight,
Mhm.
freeze, fawn system, right?
Mhm.
And so being able to notice when you've gone past that, because once we get there, dear listener, that person shuts down.
I know.
It's pure
Yeah.
defense. They're not going to
Yep.
listen to you. Nope, nope, nope. This lady's crazy. That doctor, I
Yeah.
don't trust her.
Right.
Like
That's
whatever.
inappropriate what she's saying
Yeah.
and doing. And yeah. Yep. So it is a fine, but the thing is, it's completely different for each person, So like when we work with private clients, we could find where that
Yes.
problem is. We could feel it in them. We could see it in their body language. We could hear it in their tone of voice.
Yeah,
But when I've
yeah.
gotten on, like I was just in Miami last week speaking to 60 folks and especially, and I'm up on a stage too, so I'm not even like down with them, and I'm
Yeah.
like, and there's lights on me, and I'm looking, and I was like, okay, they're pretty quiet. I think they're still with
said
me. I think they're
something.
good. And it was,
Oh,
I
yeah.
mean, it was a 2.5 hour talk, and like they hung in it till the end, like they were there and they were
Nice.
participating and they asked good questions. So I was like, okay. Yeah, because in other audiences, if people are quiet or whatever, it might be like they're detached or they're on their phones. But so often with our topics, they're reflective and they're sitting in that discomfort, but they're staying there. They could walk out if they wanted to, and they're not. They're sitting there and they're taking notes and they're doing the activities and they're asking questions at the end. So, but yeah, I love that analogy to sports that you gave because that's a really good, because I talk about you don't want to get too far outside your comfort zone because you're around these topics, you could be out of integrity with your values. You could do something that you're like, oh, we're having some drinks or something. And the next day you're like, I didn't want to do that. That wasn't right for me. That's not who I am. So I was like, what is that thing that feels uncomfortable? I like to use the example because this works with a lot of my audiences. If I told you you had to go home and read some erotica out loud to your partner, that is one that hits a lot of these audiences, right? For
Yeah.
me, I'd be like,
I'm
oh,
like,
fun.
yes, this is
But
exciting.
for most of these folks, first of all, they don't read much erotica, even themselves, and they certainly wouldn't want to read it out loud and have to hear it in their their own voice, especially the women. And so and I go, whatever discomfort you're feeling right now, that's what I want you to play with, because there's nothing in that that's out of integrity with your values. There's nothing that's going to, mess you up or your relationship, anything like that. But that sort of awkwardness, embarrassment, out of your comfort zone, play with that. So.
Yeah, that's such a good invitation. Such a good invitation. I've learned from so many amazing guests on the show. And a few years back, I was recording with Dominatrix, and I was trying to unpack all of my internal messaging around womanhood. And I had subbed before, but never dommed, right? And so that was something that they had recommended to me to read erotica. And so I did. And it was hard, like a few years back, to like hold it with power, you know?
Yeah.
She's like, this is your fascist state, control it. And I'm like, I don't know how, you know, like I was just like, you know, but like I can now and play,
yes.
you know, but like at the time it was just so like, and again, thinking about the voice again, like where, how
really
much
Yeah.
opening do we need to do to be able to read that with confidence?
Yeah, that's good. Voice. You're making me think. I just wrote the word voice down, which I'm going to look back in like an hour and be like, what the hell? Why did I write voice down?
The podcast. Yeah.
I know. I was like, whoa, why did that stand out? What you're making me think of, and I mentioned this before we started recording, is so so this summer I launched something new called the Center for Courageous Intimacy as a hub for online resources. My biggest goal was that I really wanted it to be like a community service for people to be able to come and get free resources. So one of the headings at the top is free stuff, free tools. And folks can go in and there's worksheets from different things that you want to be able to have more gratitude. You want to talk about desire with your partner, red and green flags in dating. And I'm going to just keep adding more and more. And folks can download them for free. They don't even have to give me their email address, nothing. It matters to me because where can we get good information like this? Where can we get a tool like that? Because I realized, you know, over my 32 years of all the audiences I've worked with, and it's funny to think, like, you know, between working with Girl Scouts and working with senior citizens and college students and CEOs, and I worked at the LGBT Community Center and with HIV positive folks, and you know, gave a talk on consent half naked at Burning Man.
I love that
like the
for
whole
you. Yes.
this broad range of things I've done. But I realized, regardless of the audience and the context, fundamentally, what I'm most teaching people how to do is to have the courage and the skills to have the conversations they most want to have or need to have, but they're avoiding for some reason. And like that piece is what ties it all the way through. So that was the impetus behind the Center for Courageous Intimacy of like how do we bring more courage to our deepest connections with others, and then how do we, with that courage, then step into a space of learning tools and new skills and then practicing it. And so I have a community gathering aspect of this new center called an intimacy speakeasy. And I had my first one last night. Beautiful. And it went beautifully. Yeah. And I had 30 folks in an actual speakeasy, so an actual hidden bar in San Diego, this super swanky, awesome space. We had a DJ there playing yacht rock. Everybody got a complimentary drink. And I broke them into small groups and gave them question prompts to talk about things we don't normally talk about. Like the first question was just to kind of get them going. Like, what's a topic that's really taboo that you wish wasn't so taboo and was more normal for people to talk about? And I opened each one by sharing an example to help them, because I was like, they're not going to know like how deep to go or how, you know, what to do. So like that one, I was like, I wish we talked about masturbation more. I wish we talked about, and especially how women positions, how they touch themselves, what they're thinking of, toys, lube, are they laying down, are they using pillows, how long does it take, all of those details. We almost never talk about that. I wish that was normal. And I saw a couple be like, their eyes got big and they're like, oh, okay, we're doing that here. Okay.
Amazing.
So, but that voice, that, you know, what you were saying about voice, I want to help people find their voice around these topics and encourage them to have a stronger, while still compassionate, but stronger voice around these topics. And whether it's the depth of their emotional intimacy and fears and shames, to their sexual needs and desires.
Absolutely. And there's so much power when you hold that conversation like you just did with confidence, right? It's you know, when you listen to sad music and it makes you feel sad. Right? Because the vibrations of the musical chords, you know, they're coming into each ear, right? And so everyone listening to this podcast right now is hearing you inside their body, right? And so you're the music of your voice that is playing with confidence, right?
Yeah,
that is transmuting that to folks. And so when they hear you say it, oh, you're right. Maybe I could say this later today with that kind of confidence that I heard.
Thank you. Thank you for saying that. That's lovely. That's a lovely reflection back. I appreciate that.
Yeah. I'm curious, what were some of the other questions that were in the lineup?
I mean, I had an opening one in small groups, and they were just introducing themselves, why they were at the event,
Sure.
and also what's the best compliment they ever received. Because I wanted people to have, fun with that and maybe get a little spicy or, depending on their comfort level, and just start with something that felt really positive. And then, let's see, another question was, which topic is hardest for you to talk about, whether it's emotional intimacy or sexual intimacy in dating or relationships? And why do you think that's so hard for you?
I had one guest talk about enema play, and I realized when I edited it back, I was like, I didn't even know how to respond at the time. I was like, she was like, it's great. I'm having so much fun. And I was like, that's great. Next topic. I was like, I didn't even know what to say. I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
It's like anal, cool. But like, wow, now we're talking enema. Like, what?
Yeah. Well, so I love that you said it too. So one, the thing, I talked them through this concept that I call generous listening and 4 steps. So I did like this 10 minutes of teaching about how do you be a good listener? How do you listen with an open heart and kindness? How do you not judge, not give advice, not interrupt? And then when somebody's completed, how do you ask a curiosity question, a genuine curiosity question? Because with these topics, so much like we freeze up if we're not comfortable with it or we're not familiar with it and we don't know what to do, or we want to like judge in some way. Like that's often what people do. And I'm saying you were doing that, of course.
Sure.
But that's so often what we do. And so I taught them all these skills. I literally gave them a handout that had a list of curiosity questions to ask.
Yes.
To be like, oh, tell me more. I don't know a lot about this. Tell me more about like why you enjoy this so much or what this is like for you. And so just so they could learn those skills together. So and the final question I asked, there's one more and I can't remember what it was. Final question I asked though is, what's a conversation that you're avoiding right now? And whether in, a romantic or intimate relationship or a bigger other relationship. Because a couple folks, people were there, some in couples, some single folks, some people. I told them, I go, if you're here with a partner, you could choose to stay with them in these small groups. We're going to have 2 different small groups with a couple questions. You could choose to stay. You could split up for the second group. You could split up the whole time. And that was really interesting to see what different couples did. Because I think some couples were there because they wanted to, and I got that feedback afterwards. This is exactly what we needed to start talking about topics we're not talking about. And I'm like, that, like, it makes me want to cry. I'm like, that is exactly what I wanted here. And like one guy wrote me afterwards and he goes, it was amazing. Like I heard her talk about things I can never get her to talk about. And she did it and she said she enjoyed the event. And I was like, that's amazing.
So good.
And like a couple people shared, like somebody said there was some folks that were single there or dating. And one said, you know what, I haven't been dating in like 3 years. And this is making me realize like I need to have that conversation with myself and see what I'm avoiding and why. And someone else was like, somebody that's recently divorced and is dating and was like, I am dating somebody new and have been for a year and I don't actually know how serious or committed he is because I'm afraid to ask.
Oof, my
so
heart.
Stuff like that, like it was just beautiful, and it was all over the map. What folks, because we had some folks that were like hardcore poly, kink folks in the lifestyle, all of that, and other folks that I know were like, I don't even know what they're talking about. I don't know what those words are. I don't know what a pro-dom is. I don't know any of these things. So which was amazing to get such a variety. In a space like that. I'm just delighted it worked.
So good. I mean, that's political. That's activism. That's changing lives. That is essential. That's how we end rape culture, is by talking about pleasure and getting it out there. So hell yes to that. And I appreciate that the way you set up the container was an invitation to either stay in pairings or to separate. Because I'm remembering, I told you about that relationship anarchist series I do. I had one guest who came on, their name was Juno, and they talked about some of their relationship anarchy communities. And one thing that they regretted out of the community events that they held was that they would force people upon entering to separate from because they were trying to do like non-hierarchy and building community. But Juno was like, when I look back back on that, I think it scared a lot of people who felt like they
Yeah.
couldn't come in. And so I
Yeah.
appreciate the framing you have of that, which is not force. It's an invitation.
Mm-mm.
Like you can
Mm-hmm.
separate. There's benefits
Yep.
to that. And
Yeah.
also, when you're talking about such a complex topic for most folks, it makes sense that you would want that buddy or two
Yeah.
or three or whatever group you're
Yeah.
in, right? Because
Yeah, there ended up
this is
being two
tense.
folks that were cousins there. And I was like, I go, you can choose to be with your cousin if you want. You don't have to.
Separate.
You know?
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah, it was, thank you. And it was
Yeah.
really, and I think part of it probably is so many of my audiences now, are like wealthier people who just really are not used to talking about these topics, but they want them. They're hiring me to come in and do it because they realize it's important.
Yeah.
And they want to address it and they want to normalize it and learn skills in it. So for me, it's so much like I'm always like, I encourage you to be uncomfortable, but you never have to say anything you don't want to. And if you want to stay with this person, know that it might. Right, it was what was interesting is like some people having their partner there, I think it made them feel more free
Yes.
to open up and share, and then other people it absolutely
Yep.
made them feel more closed up. And so, but I
Totally.
wanted everybody to choose that for themselves. Or I love the folks that like stayed together for the first pairing of 2 questions and then switched to and split up and
Yeah.
switched to other groups.
The
I
yes
think that was
and.
probably like a good mix for them to experience it
Totally.
both ways. So
Yeah, and what kind of sex educators would we be if we forced people to do things, like that? Like that's
right,
not
or to
yeah,
have
no,
our comfort with stuff, or
Yeah.
they have to have our
failing
yeah.
consent 101, like
I
from the
know, yeah.
beginning. So
Exactly.
so like I
Yeah.
appreciate that frame. And I also really appreciate the frame of curiosity questions. When I was in grad school, we had a required group psychology class, which was really fascinating experience for another
Oh.
podcast. Because it was like all my a small group of my cohort, probably about
And then you
8.
were all studying each other in the group together. I
Yeah, it was
love that.
fascinating. But
That is so great.
the tricky part about it was a classic process group, and so our professor would come in and be like, we need to talk about the here and the now. And we'd be like, what does that mean? He's like, the here and the now. And then we'd all try to figure it out and we'd get frustrated, which is like a classic thing.
Yeah.
But he'd like call us out randomly when we were doing it wrong. It was very confusing, but classic processing group style. So it was fascinating.
Interesting.
It's a whole other conversation.
But is
but-
it meant to not feel so safe and comfortable?
Yeah, I think it's supposed to bring out everyone's difficulties, right? So you could see how people who struggle with unknown started, how they
Yeah.
reacted.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
So yes, it is supposed to bring out stuff of people. And so one of the things we did do in that though was at least like a highlight of our week to start it off before we got into the deep processing group of the here
Yeah.
and the now. And I remember I was in that group, and the night prior, I had gone to my first play party and had my first exhibitionist scene with one of my long-term partners. And it was
Oh,
kinky
wow.
and amazing. And I came out glowing, just
Yeah.
glowing. And I remember having that circle moment with all these other therapists. And it's like, what's the highlight of your week? And now I'm sitting in my
Oh,
chair
yeah.
going like, well, this is the highlight of my week, but is this the space I can say this?
Right?
Luckily, the
So did
professor.
you?
Yeah, well, yes. And so luckily, the professor was queer and talked about how he had done research in the kink and BDSM
helpful.
scene. So then I had a
Yeah.
little bit of a okay, if everyone hates this, at least the professor I know will be on my side.
Oh, yeah.
So I was like, and also, what does it mean in the field of psychology if I can't name this? We study the human condition. If I can't say this pleasurable consent thing that happened to me, what the
Yeah.
fuck field is this?
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
I did, and the
Good.
whole
Good for
room
you.
went silent.
Silent. Yeah. Yeah.
And I went home that day and cried.
I
I cried because I was like, oh. But when I came back the next week, one of my colleagues, Rebecca, she was like, I just didn't know what to ask you. I didn't know, would it be inappropriate to ask further questions? So I'm thinking about your curiosity questions. And the power of that. And I will say one of the people in the group 2 years later did say, hey, my friend's looking for spaces to go play. You talked about that once in class.
Hey, yeah.
So it did,
Yeah.
resources.
That's awesome. But it's
But,
I feel
yeah.
like, and I could tell you and I are both those people and have
Yep.
been, where we know we have, I think, both the commitment to showing up and being us, and we know we have the inner strength, even when it's really hard, to be that person. And I mean, some of what I did last night, absolutely, where I wanted to role model for them sharing a really uncomfortable
Sure.
answer. And I did. I pushed myself like to say uncomfortable things. And my boyfriend was there as well. And I was like, I'm not even going to turn and look at my boyfriend's face right now.
You can't.
Because
You can't.
he's a cancer researcher. He is not in this realm or world at all.
Yeah.
And like, let's just, yeah. So, and to his credit, he participated in the whole thing. He loved
love
it. He was
that.
like, lovely.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
but that space where we push ourselves to, to be the role model and confident because we know we can handle it. But it reminds me of Brene Brown's work and her talking
Yes.
about we need to be mindful of who we share our vulnerabilities with.
Oh my God. Yeah.
And are they
Oof.
going to judge us? Are they going to shame us? Or if we're sharing a shame, are they going to add shame to that because of their own discomfort? Or are they going to be true safe witnesses and containers for that? And I know I push myself in that realm a lot because there's just a lot of spaces that I'm in that I could tell by the vibe of the group. This is not a vulnerable group. That's what I'm here, though, to teach them. And I need to be that person leading the way to do that and to normalize it. And afterwards, I've had so many people who do thank me or they write on evaluations. Oh my God, you made these topics so normal right from the start. And but it's like it's hard. Like there's an inner fortitude, and that sometimes afterwards I was like, well, shit, that was really fucking uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Like I did it, and I know it had a good purpose, but boy, that is sitting in me not so well.
Yeah.
Because they were not the safest container for that vulnerability.
Yeah.
So.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm definitely not doing that in all of the circles I run into.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
Therapist? Hell yeah, I'm gonna push you, right? Grab your pearls and we're going. Like this is for your future client that's gonna thank me.
And if you're judging me, that's all you.
Yes, exactly.
It's all on you. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so being able to gauge that, you have to be able to stay safe for yourself, right? I appreciated Brene Brown. The metaphor she gave to her daughter was a marble jar, right? So when you have a deeper conversation with someone and they take it well, to put a marble in the jar. And over time, as that jar fills up, okay, wow, there's a lot of marbles in this jar I can shake. It's time to go even deeper and I can share something really vulnerable. And so essentially that skill of like pacing and titrating to find out like how safe these people are with that. And I do think if I were to say that to my younger self, she'd probably be like, well, how do you know? And I guess it's almost such a felt sense now.
It is. I know.
I think is connected to how deeply connected I am to my body and pleasure, that you're more sensitive to people and how they react when you got to put at least a little bait out there, and like see, but from there I feel so in tune now that I can pick up on the small body language and all that sort of stuff. So I do think that is connected to more embodiment and pleasure.
Yeah. And I would also add to that, because I get that question a lot. And so for me, like, how do I trust my intuition with someone else? How do I trust my read on somebody? How do I know who's safe? How do I know?
Yeah.
And I always say, it starts with ourselves. And the space I'm always teaching people is the somatic mindfulness aspect of it. Like, we need to study ourselves, our emotions, our patterns, our motivations, our desires, and get intimately connected to them and understand them and study them and know what it feels like. And I take as part of that, and as a sociologist, and looking back at these topics of where you got your first messages, and do they feel like they serve you, or are they insulting and hurting you at this point? And look at that and journal on it and feel into it and really get connected to where you're feeling these different emotions and stories you've been told and beliefs inside in your story inside of you. And the more intimately connected we get to those nuances, we could start then reading. You're like, something's not quite right. Like, they're saying all the right things, but something's not matching. And let me listen to that voice. Let me reflect on this right now. Let me have the courage to ask questions I wouldn't normally ask. So it starts with, it's a different aspect of embodiment, of awareness, of really feeling into ourselves and studying that.
Yeah, so much. And I find it so sad and comical all at the same time when you get that client that comes into your office and they say, oh my gosh, I want a better sex life. I want a better sex life. How can you help me do this? And you say, well, how about you meditate? What about that? No. I don't have time for that. I don't have time.
Yeah.
Just tell me how I can have better sex.
Yep.
Tell me what pill I can take, right? Like what
I
pill, you
know.
know? And it's like, okay.
It's so good, but that shift from, because like what they're doing is like, you know, like the pushing or the pulling instead of like the allowing and the surrendering. Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
really big shift in energy. And then they're like, yeah, no, I don't have time. That's uncomfortable. I need to be doing something. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's good.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel like the ability to actually feel pleasure. I mean, the research says we can't multitask as
Right.
much as I try every day. I'm a modern woman. What can I say? You know, but we can't, right? And so when I think about being able to receive pleasure, if my brain is going, well, I got to edit that podcast and then that client and then this and then that,
Right.
we're not
I know.
able to feel, right? And so I think the more time that we can be able to spend meditating, and that doesn't
Mm-hmm.
have to just look like sitting in silence and
Right.
breathing. It can, you know, I teach yoga, that's another thing, and so that's a great way where you're doing
Yeah.
movement and mind body, right?
Yeah,
so it's
it's
a
really
little bit
good.
easier. They would say the highest form of meditation was in stillness, and so the asanas, the practice of the movements and the postures was to help get there, right? And so
Ah.
like that's one way to help that. For it's also for me rock climbing, that's a great thing where when I am literally up there, if I start thinking about my day, I will fall, you know? So it's like,
Yeah.
nope, I feel my body holding here and move there. And so it doesn't have to be, dear listener,
That's
as
amazing.
static, right? Like, and for
Yeah.
you, it sounds like volleyball, right? Like whatever it is
Yeah.
for you, that movement practice, like find something that you love that's
Yeah.
not torture. Because I think
Yeah.
that's the first step. People
Yeah.
think, oh my God, I have to sit,
Right.
which can be pleasurable. There's a moment where the breath can
Oh
be
my
pleasurable
gosh,
too.
it feels amazing. And then I'm like, why don't I do this more?
Yeah.
This feels lovely. I don't want to leave this space right now.
Right.
This feels amazing. Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
But it's getting over the hump
exactly.
to doing it.
Well,
for
yeah,
me.
when
Yeah.
there's so many systems going on right now, I'm like, what time do I have? I need to help end rape culture. Here, let me make another worksheet that I can put on my website. Like, let's go. And it's like, no, Nicole, like rest. You have to rest
I
too.
know.
Like,
I know. And the worst is, yeah,
whoa.
when I'm sitting and like, you know, meditating and then I was like, oh, that's interesting. My brain went to that place. Oh, that'd be a great Substack blog
Yeah,
post on that topic. And I was like, oh, dude, you're doing it again. Stay in the moment. You don't have to be productive right now.
Yeah, which can also
Yeah.
come into your sex life as a sex
Yeah.
educator. You're like
Yeah,
thinking that you're like,
absolutely.
wow, okay, I should write a letter about how
I know.
this.
I know. And I was like, oh shit, this is that thing that person mentioned recently. I was like, oh my God, do not think about your clients right now. This is so distracting. And I was like, oh shit, I should have said that thing because that's helping me right now. And I was like, is it helping me right now? Or am I distracted right now? I know. The same thing. And then I was like, dude, let them go. Be here. I know.
So what are the things that help you step into your pleasure with all of that going on? Like how
Yeah.
do you step into that in today's world?
Yeah. I mean, and at 52 and being really perimenopausal and so many ups and downs and it's a really definitive time period of inconsistency in what my body feels like, gaining weight that I don't have control over, being bloated, not or orgasm being harder, not feeling much desire. And then just feeling like this anxiety that I've never had before. So it's a really unique time period that it is much harder to connect to pleasure. My pathways in, though, to sexual pleasure tend to now need to be other forms of pleasure, of relaxation. Like my boyfriend earlier this year, we tried out in his backyard to see if we liked it an inflatable hot tub.
Ooh.
Best fucking investment ever. It is so good for me. It is so helpful. And to sit in there and relax, and I'll do some meditation, and we'll be there together. I'll bring a little waterproof vibrator with me, and to start kissing. And it's just like I need more to get my head and emotions and body to a space to be able to drop into a sexual space. I need a lot more like support around that. And I know what works. So, and the hot tub's been amazing. for me, I cannot access that space after like 10 o'clock at night. It's,
Mm,
and it's more downtime. Some of it is, like reading for pleasure,
sure.
and just feeling like there's just this, these spaces to like calm my nervous system
Mm,
and to feel more present in my body.
yeah.
And those spaces then help. So it is, for me and my boyfriend, we've been together a little over 3 years. It's a lot of intentionality, but thankfully, like, this is what I do and this is what I help people do. And I'm just practicing what I preach. And
Hmm.
thankfully, he's so loving and understanding and like such a good partner around this and teamwork around this. And he never, which is amazing, never feels like I talk about perimenopause too much, which
Mm,
is amazing. He goes like, I want to be in this, babe, with you. I want to be a partner with you. This is both of us, and which is lovely. So yeah, so for now, like access to sexual pleasure is through relaxation and other bodily pleasure and
hmm.
like a nurturing, a feeling like a self-nurturing aspect and then shifting into yeah, sexual exploration and pleasure. So
Yeah, yeah. I'm hearing how the connection to the erotic is the frame I usually go through, right? The connection to the erotic is in all areas of life. It's
yeah.
not like you can just come into sex and just have that be this like box that we step
Yeah,
into.
no, not at all.
You know, like
Yeah, not at all.
how you move through the day, right?
Yeah.
In
Yes,
all the
yes.
different ways,
Yeah.
whether you're rushing to that appointment, which I
Yeah.
tend to do, or rushing to do this thing and then that thing and then that thing, and then you want to sit down and then feel
Yeah.
pleasure with your vibrator in the hot tub, you're going to be
Yeah.
like, go, 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 right? Like,
Yeah.
you have to be able to
Yeah.
like find that peace in all different areas, right? Or if you are trying to create the container for it, still allowing yourself to come into that rhythm. It's a running on the treadmill, right? You run on the treadmill for so long, you get onto stable ground, you're like, this feels weird. Like, why is this ground not
Right.
moving? You know,
Yeah.
like it's like,
Yeah.
whoa. And so it's a
Yeah.
similar thought. Like you're running, 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 then like, and now I'm gonna solo push. What are we doing? What are we doing? You know? And so the
Yeah.
brain just cannot
Yeah.
attune to that. And so I appreciate, as you mentioned, this is something that comes through multiple different areas of pleasure, of really slowing down
Yeah.
to be with yourself and your body, not just in the sexual, but in all
Yeah.
areas of
Yep.
pleasure.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, living in a place like San Diego is helpful. Like before we got on this call, I went out on my little deck and I was like, oh my God, this sun feels so good. I was like, and I was just feeling the sun on my skin and my face
Yes.
and doing a little meditation. And I was like, oh God, these like simple pleasures like that.
Yes.
So yeah, again, it's like it really is an intentionality, and giving ourselves permission to take little times like that. But knowing, like for me, it's just such a difference in my overall happiness and
Mm-hmm.
ability to connect with others.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm curious too. I feel like another area that's not talked about often is the habituation that happens in long-term
Mm, yeah.
relationships. Not a lack of love and not a lack
No.
of desire, but the very natural occurrence of habituation. How do
Yeah.
you live with that in your own relationship as well as work with
Yeah.
clients in that?
Yeah. Um, I mean, I'd say with clients, it's probably, one of my specialty areas of like I'd mentioned before, like thinking outside the box.
Right.
And even, and whether, well, when I'm with an audience, giving them a worksheet, I have like an erotic play worksheet that they can go
Great.
through, and just to be reflecting on things or maybe something they used to do, they haven't done in a long time or something they've never tried. And just normalizing this idea, like our bodies are always changing, our lives are changing, our hormones are changing, our priorities, our kids, everything's always shifting and changing. So your sex life can also or needs to also. And that doesn't mean there's anything wrong. If your partner says, "Hey, I'd love to try new things," it doesn't mean they're unhappy with you. It means they just, wants to bring some new energy in or explore. Being able to explore something new with somebody is a form of intimacy, of
Mm-hmm.
taking that risk together and being vulnerable together.
Right.
So, yeah, and then I'm in my own relationship. I'm in a space right now that we're having some conversations around this. So I
Yeah.
don't want to share too much because it's not fair to him at all.
Sure. I hear
Um,
you.
but Yeah, so for me, it's just a reminder to practice what I preach. It's the intentionality because we both have really busy careers. We both travel for work. We travel for pleasure also, which is great. He's got his kids half time. Like there's a lot of competing priorities. And so yeah, it's then being like, okay, I got a worksheet for that. I got a worksheet for everything. And so I'll be like, I'll be at your house Thursday night. Like, let's do a half hour, 45 minutes of this worksheet. And I'll be like, okay, sounds good, babe.
Nice.
Which is
Whatever you
good.
say. You're the
So,
expert here.
yeah, well, and part of it is, I think, I've, when I work with just small groups of women, sometimes I'm like, if you want more emotional intimacy, if you want to be having sexual conversations, if you want, quality time and all. So, like, are you the person who's better at these topics in your relationship? Because I've noticed like, I will always be the person better at these topics. It's almost impossible. I'm gonna,
Yeah.
find a man who is more equipped in
Fair.
these areas and coaching and knowing how to tackle concerns or disconnect. But sometimes I'm waiting for him to initiate the conversation or start it, or we started a conversation, but he's not doing anything differently. And I realized I would get so frustrated. And then I was like, well, Jesus Christ, he doesn't know how to do that. Like, this is none of
Yeah.
his work at
Yeah.
all. And this is literally what I live,
Eat.
sleep,
Yeah,
breathe,
totally.
eat every day and what I help other
Uh,
people with, and I'm really good at it. When I've worked with other small groups of women, I've been like, are you waiting for them to do something that you're actually way more skilled at doing and initiating or creating a conversation around? And they're like, oh shit, you're right. And I'm like, if you bring it up, will he have the conversation with you or do it? And they're like, yeah, actually, he probably will. I just need to initiate. And I go, maybe this is a place that we just say, hey, this is a
mm,
strength of mine.
mm,
So step in that strength, step into your
yeah.
power in that way. If this is something you want and you're getting frustrated or you're disappointed, they're not doing something differently. I mean, there may be an issue with commitment there or, not taking things seriously or not prioritizing. There may be, but it also just may be that literally they have no idea where to start or what to do. And if you
Yeah.
do, then get it started and do it and own that as a strength of yours and what you're bringing to the relationship. So that's
Hmm.
something that's helpful for me to remember. And then also, yeah, I've had just a lot of women clients, especially women like, around in their 50s, 60s, and they're like, oh, yeah, no, we've been married 30 years. This is definitely not his strength. And so, like, what am I doing here? Just waiting. Let me start initiating these and doing it with like pride that this is a strength versus, and this is a gift I could bring to the relationship versus resentment or disappointment.
Yeah, so many of our partners just don't know, right? We're
Yeah.
not mind readers. We can't know,
I
right? And
know.
so
Well, and it's when
having,
we're in the
yeah,
field, there's so much we know, and then we forget that other people don't know any of this stuff. Or like, where to start is often the point, like where to start. And I was like, oh, I
yeah,
always could find a place to start.
for
I
sure,
just
for
didn't need to do
sure.
it.
Well,
So,
yeah, and even outside of
yeah,
that, when I'll have very, as we were saying earlier, having very deep, vulnerable conversations about emotions or sex, and I'm like, I just can't even engage anymore with small talk. It feels
right.
so like,
Did I cross a line? Should
yeah,
I
exactly,
not have mentioned anal beads again? Was that the wrong time to
exactly.
mention anal beads?
Should I have not asked about your relationship to your father? No, too far.
I know.
Got it. Oops, my bad. I felt something, but it's like
I
I don't even
know.
have a scale of
I
reference
know.
anymore, which
I
like
know. Same.
good, bad, and otherwise, right? But yeah, there's so many years of societal conditioning too, specifically where a lot of women are taking up this call here, even in the polyamory space. So many women are
Mm,
taking up the call there,
mm,
not necessarily in the concept of expanding sexuality, because if anything, in that sense, men have had much more freedom and
yeah.
expectation of sexual liberty than
Yeah.
women have. But the concept of sex with emotions, right?
Mm,
That is a space where
mm-hmm.
women are excelling in the polyamory
Yeah.
space in ways
Mm,
because of not because of an innate sense of more capacity. I think it begins all the way at that first moment when you see, not me, I don't have kids, but like culturally, when we see a small boy start to cry and you say, man up and go back
Ugh, it's so,
right? Like,
so sad.
right? And so then you think about that years into
Yep.
existence, and here we
Yeah.
are with all of
Yep.
that now,
Yep.
right? And so there is a real reality based on the gender roles that I know a lot of women are leading these conversations,
Mm-hmm.
and it can be
Mm-hmm.
frustrating, so
Yeah.
frustrating. And
Yeah.
also, what does it mean to have compassion for our
Mm-hmm.
partners? What does it mean to assume good intent? That's something I'm always
Mm-hmm.
working on when we get in a fight,
Mm-hmm.
an argument, right? It's like,
Mm-hmm.
good intent, good intent. We're on the same team. We're on the same
Mm-hmm.
team. And
Yeah.
then being able to like really slow down and bring in more curiosity into that conversation, because again, they might not know. They often, our partners don't know how to touch our clitoris, right? We got to
Mm-hmm.
get more specific. I like the
Yeah.
circles, bring on the lube, right?
I
Like,
know. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Or definitely harder, more on that side a little
Yeah,
bit.
exactly.
Oh, no, 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 it needs to be softer. I know, it's just gonna keep changing. Yeah. So, but
Yeah.
all of that is there's just so like it's so raw.
Yeah.
We have, to have none of our armor up in those situations and to be able to really meet another human in that space and make it safe for each other to communicate from those spaces. It's amazing. I think that's the most beautiful thing two humans can share of that emotional intimacy around sexual intimacy, but it's also one of the scariest things. And I can even
Mm-hmm.
think for myself when I was younger of times that maybe my reactions, like I unwittingly shamed somebody because in the moment
Sure.
I was just sort of like,
Right.
shocked or stunned or uncomfortable, basically. And then
Right.
we react from and all of us have had that happen to us in one way or another. And sometimes the other person maybe really is a dick, but sometimes they were just unskilled, you know?
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
yeah.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Window of tolerance, as we said. And when you do say, I need more force or at this speed or this rate, I think in my own personal journey, one of the most transformative things was having the first time I had a partner say, thank you for telling me that. The first
Oh,
time I
that's
had a partner who didn't
lovely.
go into the ego problematic of, oh, I'm not
Yeah.
doing it perfect. Ugh, like whatever that bullshit
Yeah.
is. That first partner that says, thank you, that's great. Is there anything else? Creates
So
even more space.
amazing. I
Anything else
know.
you need, right? And so my heart goes out to my younger self and for all the people who are
Mm,
listening who have shared that with someone and then that person got activated. I hope
yeah.
whoever is listening that resonates with, they can know that that's not a reflection of you as much as that person got
Yep.
triggered in their own
Yeah.
performance ego that they need to release.
Yep. Yeah. A while back, I was one of the leaders in a group called Sex Positive San Diego.
Okay.
And one of the main things we taught folks is we trained them and taught them in consent. And then we hosted different events and all, like sort of different levels of play levels and touch levels. Is the response when somebody says no to something or puts up a boundary, say, thank you for taking care of yourself. And it's so, it's kind of cheesy and it's contrived. But when somebody said it to me, like it literally makes me want to tear up right now. It feels so freaking honoring. And when you
Yeah.
just said you're like when they thanked you for like it feels so honoring that like oh you're not going to get pissed, you're not going to get mad, you're not going to try to push, you're not going to try to take. You're just like, "Oh, yeah, I see you." And yeah, you said no to some or put up a boundary. Great. You're taking care of yourself. I was like that is amazing. That feels amazing.
Mhm.
I that is not at all part of how people communicate sexually in general though, which is sad.
No, I
Hmm.
know. But you did so much work today to challenge that with your voice. Ah! And then truly we'll get to the end, still unpacking more and still doing more teaching, which is a joy, truly. And I always have so much hope for the younger generations who are starting in this place, right, where we're leading these
Yeah.
conversations. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, I was like, you future feminists are going to take this so much further than I can even fathom. Like, I'm so excited for you, right?
Yeah. Especially if we
Yeah.
like, I mean, I feel like part of, where you and I definitely overlap in our work is this like, right, this voice of talking about what's hard to talk about, but that compassion piece also. And like that combination of those things in feminism has certainly been missing at various times
Mm,
in history. But compassion towards ourselves and compassion towards others. That to me is really the only way you make really lasting social change. And not that there's not a place for like anger, because there is definitely a place for anger, and protection and walls of keeping people out. But if that is your only tool in your toolbox, I don't think that's how we make lasting change. And we're also not like happy and healthy in the process. So it is really to do activism and social change through both confidence and compassion.
Yeah.
It's hard. It
Oh,
hurts. It's
yeah.
really hard.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but
Hmm.
I could speak for myself. I'm a much stronger person for it, and I'm and people are able to listen to me more.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Absolutely. Yeah, we change with curiosity.
mhm.
Yeah. Well, we've had such a great conversation today.
This is
Yes,
lovely. Yeah.
yes. All right. Well, as we come towards the end of our time, I'm going to take a deep breath with you again. And check in and see if you have anything else that you want to share with the listeners. Otherwise, I have a closing question for us.
Yeah. Just one last thought to kind of pull it together is like I guarantee, whatever sort of emotions or things you're stuck with or fears that you have or insecurities, you are not alone. You are absolutely not alone. And we all of us have emotional hangups and fears and insecurities and shames around sex and our bodies, like all of us in one way or another. So please know you're not alone and consider like who can you start talking to around these topics and create safe space for each other if it's not something you normally do to help build the courage and the skills for yourself around
Mm-hmm.
this.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that's the only way you can step into compassion, as you said, right? Is
Mhm.
if you think, I am alone, I am broken, I am this
Yeah.
horrible blah, 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 fill in the blank. That's the opposite of compassion,
Yeah. Yeah, it is.
right?
Yeah, actually, part of what I said was I was like, oh, yeah, that's part of the practice for self-compassion is that common humanity of one, realizing you're struggling, the mindfulness, and then second, realize you're not alone in this. And then take that compassion you feel towards others and bring it in towards yourself. And then use that
Yeah.
as a launch point for your courage to start these conversations with others.
Right, right. Finding community, go to the speakeasy, continue to listen to the podcast, find a
Yep.
community wherever you're at, right? Because
Yeah.
that's that next step, right? Is like have compassion, you're not alone, and then find the others. And you'll find resilience through that. Our resilience is not just our independent existence. Sure, that's there, but it's interdependent. It's also based on the community that you live in. So finding other people who share those values will
Yeah.
give you such strength and that voice as we spoke to today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yay.
Amazing. Okay. Well, the one question that I ask everyone on the show, which I always say so often that I now can't even say it without it becoming like a song. So I'm going to continue to try and not do that. What's one thing? See, it's just so there. Here we go. What's one thing that you wish other people knew was more normal?
Gosh. I mean, there's so many directions I could go,
I
but I'm
know.
what comes up at the top is the thing I was just saying, this, that we have fears. We have fears and insecurities and shames around these topics. Yeah, I think my final point is the same one here too, because that is so normal across the board, yet somehow we feel isolated in those struggles. I mean, certainly the nuances are different for each person, but the underlying emotions are often the same.
Mm-hmm. 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 So connecting with our shared humanity in that.
Yep.
May that provide relief for the suffering that we experience in the journey.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it was such a joy to have you on the podcast today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This was awesome, Nicole. I appreciate it. Yeah.
Yes, so fun. I know so many of the listeners are going to be wondering how can they find all the worksheets that you mentioned, all of your
Yes.
stuff, right?
Yes.
Where
Yes.
can they find your stuff?
So two different things. So the new thing is the website courageous-intimacy.com. Or if they just type in the Center for Courageous Intimacy, that will come up. The website will come up.
Great.
And yeah, there's free tools on there. I mean, there's tons of podcasts. Like, this podcast interview will end up on all sorts of, news stuff I've done, my TEDx talks, my
Great.
book, all the things, a podcast that I did for like 6 years. So all of those things are on there. And then also my thing that's been my work for the past like 20 years is my Dr. Jen's Den stuff, In the Den with Dr. Jen. So it's DrJennsDen.com. Again, if you just type in the Den with Dr. Jen, you'll find it.
Perfect.
And that's been my hub for, yeah, like I said, like I think I created that website, a version of it back in 2006. So
Wow.
that's been my hub all along, and like tons and tons of free materials and everything's on there. So go explore.
Great. I'll have all of that linked in the show notes below for
Awesome.
you, dear listener. And also, let me directly say thank you for your many years of service for the movement. Thank you.
Oh, you just gave me chills. Thank you. I
Of
appreciate
course,
that.
truly, many years. Thank you.
Yeah.
Dear listener, thank you so much for tuning in to Modern Anarchy. Thank you for sharing this episode with your friends, with your lovers, with your community. Truly, it means so much to me, and I am so grateful that you are here. If you are wanting to release jealousy in your non-monogamous dynamics and step into compersion and pleasure-filled connection, you can read my book, The Psychedelic Jealousy Guide, for free on my website. There you will also find so many other free resources, including worksheets on how to clearly communicate and set commitments and boundaries within your non-monogamous dynamics, and other ways to practice clear communication about your sexual desires so that you can step into your most pleasure-filled sex and relationships. So head on over to modernanarchypodcast.com to find all of those free resources. And I look forward to seeing you next week.